Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Sunday School lesson for January the 18th. The lesson today is from Matthew chapters 8 and 9 and is entitled Every Life Valued. Our Sunday School book at the beginning of the lesson brings up a question that most people feel is probably unnecessary to ask, but is that does God care for everyone? Most responses are obviously going to be yes. And that's the right answer, too. He does. He cares about the values, he cares and values every person, regardless of their age, their nationality, their ethnicity, or their social status. He cares for all. The follow up question to that is as followers of Jesus, should we care about every person? And the answer again is yes. And that is what we'll talk about in our lesson today. Using Jesus as our example, we'll see how we should value other people's lives. Just not caring about ourselves, but caring about everyone. In the Sunday School book, it also states that Matthew's gospel is organized around two major activities of Jesus, and that's teaching and healing. Matthew 4:23 and 9:35 talks about this. In 4:23, it says that, and Jesus went about all Galilee, teaching in their synagogues and preaching the gospel of the kingdom, and healing all manner of sickness and all manner of disease among the people. And the other bookend of that in 9:35, and Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and preaching the gospel of the kingdom and healing every sickness and every disease among the people. And this is between Jesus' Sermon on the Mount and when he comes down and begins his healing and continuing his teaching history. As I said, it's right after the Sermon on the Mount and right after this teaching moment that Jesus has had. One of the most well-known sermons, or the most well-known sermon in the history of mankind, I believe. Initially after that teaching time, he begins his healing ministry also. And our lesson today mainly covers that, about the healing that Jesus performed after the Sermon on the Mount. He's just delivered the message where he's taught with great authority. And now as we get into our lesson, Jesus has come down and will again act with authority in chapters 8 and 9. The theme of this section, Jesus shows authority over disease, distance, nature, demons, and sin. And he's not just preaching and talking about his word and what he expects us to do, but he's acting upon it too. He's a doer, just as we should be in our Christian lives. When we accept Jesus, we should be doers also. We should study God's word and act on it through sharing the message of his salvation and also living our lives according to his word. That's so important. Also, you're showing people that you're living that life, that you're following the Lord. The purpose of the message today of this passage that we're going through is not just to amaze, though, but it's to reveal who Jesus is and how people should respond. His authority is revealed through compassion, and we'll talk about that also. Our first two verses that we'll talk about are 1 and 2 in chapter 8. When he was come down from the mountain, great multitudes followed him, and behold, there came a leper, and worshiping him, saying, Lord, if thou wilt, thou canst make me clean. The miracles that Jesus performed attracted much attention. It raised curiosity and made people want to know more about him. But so did his teaching ministry also. Jesus demonstrated this by the great multitudes that have followed him down. He wasn't performing healing miracles at the Sermon of the Mount, but just teaching his word. The fact that people followed him down doesn't necessarily mean that they acknowledged him as the Messiah. Many followed, I'm sure, only out of curiosity and only thought of him as a great teacher. And that's just like today in our times. There are many that believe in Jesus, but have not truly accepted him into their hearts. There's many that know him, but don't really know him in their hearts. Satan knows who Jesus did, but he's fighting against him every day. So not knowing Jesus, but not following him, you're just short. You have to accept that saving salvation in your life. The first recorded account of Jesus coming down from the mount was that he encountered a leper, just like we just read. During this time, leprosy covered a variety of sins. It could be something as simple as a skin irritation or some sort of abnormality we may have, like psoriasis or something like that. But the full-blown disease, this causes nerve damage, skin lesions, and open sores, and that's what this leopard had. And it could even be transmitted to other people. So people tried to stay clear of people that had true leprosy during this time. The Jewish religion, with the things that could be healed, there were rituals even for this that had to be followed for these lesser conditions after they cleared up. But true lepers were isolated. The full-blown leprosy was a debilitating disease. In studying this lesson, I watched a commentary by David Gusick, and he referenced the theologian William Barclay, who described leprosy as beginning with the loss of all sensation in some part of the body. Then there is an ulceration of the hands and the feet. Then comes the progressive loss of fingers and toes, until in the end they may have to amputate the whole hand, or the whole foot may have to be removed, or all the extremities like that. The duration of this disease took place over a 20 or 30 year period. So it was a lifelong struggle for these people. And William Barclay said it was a terrible progressive disease in which a man dies by inches. And I thought that was so sad. But isn't that a description of sin also? Many years of living in sin in our lives is like a slow death with no hope of survival. But with Jesus' saving grace, we can be cured of that sin, not only while we're living here in this world, but for an eternity. It doesn't mean that we won't sin, but by accepting his salvation, we can be forgiven of it. It's our responsibility to fight against that sin and seek to walk in the way that the Lord wants us to, though. We can't just walk free through life saying, well, I've been forgiven, it doesn't matter what I do. That's not part of what Jesus wants us to do. And upon meeting the Lord, the leopard shows great faith. He asked, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. He didn't doubt that Jesus could heal him. He knew it, and he could heal him if he was willing. And we need to show that kind of faith. When we pray, the things we pray for, we have to know that the Lord can give us the answers that we're looking for. Prayer, it's a powerful act. It's how we talk to God about our desires, our needs, and the needs of others. in our prayer life, we do need to pray for others. But it's more powerful with great faith, I believe. And Jesus can and will answer these prayers and in the way we want him to. He loves us, and when we come to him in great faith, I think it gives him joy to hear us pray with that great faith. He brings us so much joy in our lives. We need to show that faith and bring joy to him too, and be the people that he wants us to be. The leper also comes to Jesus in a worshipful way. And how does he do this? Well, he worshiped Jesus by coming to him, honoring him as the one who could meet an impossible need. And that's what he's looking for right here. He also worshiped Jesus by his posture, probably bowing and kneeling before Jesus. And he worshiped him with the way he addressed him, the word Lord, honoring him as his master and his God and God. And again, he worshiped Jesus with his humility by not demanding, but leaving the request up to the will of the Lord. And we must remember this also. Our needs may not always be what Jesus' will is for us in our life. What we think we need may not always be. And Jesus can work great things with us in our lives. Sometimes by our things that we have in our life that most people would say, well, I feel so sorry for them, and things like that. I think of the hymnist, Fanny Crosby. She was blind from an early age, but if you look into her life and everything, she wrote so many hymns. If you look in the hymnals in your church, Fanny Crosby is going to be the author of so many. Great life story if you ever want to look up about her. And he also worshiped Jesus with his respect for the power that he had, saying that all that was necessary was for the will of the Lord and that he could be healed. And he did this with confidence that Jesus could make him more healthy and that Jesus could make him clean, just like he can do with us in our lives and our sin and taking that away from us. Our next verses are in 3 and 4. And Jesus put forth his hand and touched him, saying, I will, be thou clean. And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. And Jesus saith unto him, See thou tell no man, but go thy way, show thyself to the priest, and offer the gift that Moses commanded for the testimony unto them. So this shows Jesus' response. He touches him. Jesus did not have to touch the leper in order to heal him. He could have just willed it without saying a word or doing anything. Even with a thought, he could have healed this man. And we'll talk about that in a minute, where Jesus does this. Yet he healed the leper with a touch, because that is what that man needed. And Jesus always knows what he needs. In fact, by touching him, according to Jewish law, Jesus would have been considered unclean at that point. Jesus in his ministry varied his manner of healing, and usually he chose a particular manner that would be meaningful to the inflicted person he was healing at the time. Mark 1:41 says, when Jesus looked, he was moved with compassion. It had been a long time since this leper had seen a face of compassion. He had to stay at a distance from everybody. He couldn't fellowship. He couldn't go to the synagogue and worship with other people. So this was meaningful to this man that Jesus touched him. And then Jesus says, I am willing. Jesus' assurance that I am willing simply answers the man's questions. and gives us a starting point for times when we wonder if Jesus is willing to heal. We should assume Jesus is willing to heal, unless he shows us different. How do we know that he's willing? By again, assuming that he is willing. But listening to him, he should tell us that he is not. We need to listen to him, and we may get that. We should get that answer to our prayers. And this is how it happened with Paul in 2 Corinthians 12, 7 through 10. We know that Paul had that thorn in the flesh, and he expected Jesus to heal him, and until he found out he would not. And Paul accepted this, and Paul went on with his ministry. This thorn of the flesh may have been something Paul used in his ministry. But when Jesus touched him, the leper was instantly cleansed. His life was changed forever. He was not only healed, but as he requested, he was cleansed. Jesus had recently said, "Ask and it will be given to you," in Matthew 7:7. So we need to bring our desires to the Lord, and this was certainly true for now with the former leper. Jesus then commands this man to give testimony to his healing to the priests only. Why did he do this? Going to the priest would only bring the former leper, would also bring the former leper back into society. By going there, it was proof that he did not have this disease anymore. And Jesus wanted the healing of the man's disease to have as much benefit as possible. And it was also part of Jewish law. If you read in Leviticus 14:21 through 22, it talks about this. Jesus here is shown authority with his preaching, his healing, but Jesus also has authority over space. The next verses in this chapter, they really aren't part of our Sunday school lesson today, but it talks about Jesus healing the centurion's servant. Jesus was amazed by the belief of the centurion, and that he did not expect Jesus to come to his home to heal the servant, but only a word would heal him from where he stood. Jesus grants the centurion's request, and his servant's healed. This man, the centurion, was obviously a Gentile because he was an officer in the Roman army. Most every Jew that witnessed this would have a reason to hate this man. Yet he came to a Jewish teacher for help. But Jesus loves all. He doesn't just love those that are faithful to him. He loves everyone. He wants everyone to come to him, and that's a lesson to us in that we should not look down on anybody different from us. And if anything, we should be evangelizing to these people. We shouldn't look down on anybody less fortunate. Those with physical abnormalities, and just anyone different from us. Because I think if we look deep inside ourselves, we all have something that we probably don't want other people to know because we're afraid they'll look down on us. None of us is perfect. And this section that we're talking about now can be a lesson all unto itself. And then our next verses are in 14 through 17. And when Jesus was come into Peter's house, he saw his wife's mother laid and sick of fever, and he touched her hand, and the fever left her, and she arose and ministered unto them. When the even was come, they brought unto him many that were possessed with devils, And he cast out the spirits with his word and healed all that were sick, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by Isaiah the prophet, saying, Himself took our infirmities and bare our sickness. Here Jesus shows that he cares about small problems also. The things that get more attention are the big miracles, but he cares about our everyday life also, the small thing. If, like Peter's mother-in-law, she's sick, but Jesus cares about that, and he heals her. He cares about all of our personal needs. And he cured her with a gentle touch of the hand. Her sickness was much less than the leopard. But like I said, Jesus still cared. And this is true not only with our spirit or our physical healing, but also with our spiritual healing. Healing also, as Peter's mother-in-law, it leads to service. She began to wait on him. This should be true in our lives also. When God heals us spiritually, shouldn't one of our first responses be to serve him? He's blessed us, and he can use us to bless others. In verses 16 and 17, Matthew understood this as a partial fulfillment of Isaiah's prophecy, which primarily refers to spiritual healing, but also includes the physical healing. In this, Matthew showed that Jesus was the true Messiah in delivering people from the bondage of sin. In chapter 8 of Matthew's Gospel shows 4 different kinds of people being healed. A Jew with no social or religious privileges, a Gentile officer of the army occupying and oppressing Israel, a woman related to Jesus' devoted followers, and then unnamed multitudes that he heals. These requests were made in different ways, and Jesus used different methods to heal. This again shows Jesus' compassion for all, not just those that fit the bill of how we think they should look or act or present themselves. We're all different, and we should realize this and be willing to accept those that don't necessarily fit our norm. Our norm may not be somebody else's norm. My wife, Paula, we've talked sometimes, and, talk about people doing some, we call them weird things, and we've talked, well, if you look at it, we're all weird. We've all got our idiosyncrasies and things like that. And then our next verses are in 9, verses 1 and 2. And he entered into a ship and passed over and came into his own city. And behold, they brought to him a man sick of the palsy, lying on a bed. And Jesus, seeing their faith, said unto the sick of the palsy, Son, be of good cheer, thy sins be forgiven thee. In these verses, Jesus is continuing his healing ministry in Capernaum. Here several men brought their paralytic friend to be healed. This is the same man that is talked about in the Gospels of Mark and Luke that was brought in through brought into his house through the roof. There were so many people outside they couldn't go through the door. So these friends had so much faith in Jesus, they wanted to get this man to him any way they could. And when Jesus saw their faith, the first thing he did was to forgive the man of his sins before healing him. This is an example of how our faith can help in the healing of others. Not their faith, but ours. We hope those people have faith, but we need to have faith that we can intercede for someone, whether it be physical problems or spiritual problems, we need to pray for those people with all of our hearts and believe that Jesus is going to answer our prayer. And then in verse 3 through 5, it continues, "And behold, certain of the scribes said within themselves, This man blasphemeth. And Jesus, knowing their thoughts, said, Wherefore think ye evil in your hearts? For whether is easier to say, Thy sins be forgiven thee, or to say, Arise and walk?" The act of forgiving this man his sins brought contempt from the Jewish leaders that were seeing all this. Their thoughts were, and they're not saying this out loud, it says their thoughts were, who is this man to forgive sins? Only God can do that. And this is the first mention of opposition to Jesus, which will continue throughout his ministry from this point forward. But Jesus knows their thoughts and rebukes them. This alone should have been a signal to these men of Jesus's of his deity, and showing that he knew what was in their evil hearts, what they were thinking at that time. But he would also offer greater proof, and that he is the Messiah. He then asked them, "What is easier to do, to forgive sins, or to heal?" He then answers his own questions by proclaiming himself as the Son of Man, as we'll read in verses 6 through 8. "But that ye know that the Son of Man hath power on earth to forgive sins, then saith he to the sick of the palsy, Arise, take up thy bed, and go unto thine house. And he rose and departed to his house. But when the multitude saw it, they marveled, and glorified God, which had given such power unto men." Since Jesus could make good on his claim to heal this man, it gave proof of his claim to also have authority to forgive sins. Forgiveness of sins, that can't be seen. But the healing process, the immediate healing of someone, proved his authority both over that healing and having the right to forgive sins. But he has authority over both. And the man was instantly healed, proving that Jesus did have the power of God both to heal and forgive. At the man's healing, the crowd properly gives the glory to God for this miracle. And that concludes our lesson today. I thought it was a great lesson. It brought out some things that I need to work on in my life, and I hope it had meaning for you also, and that you have a good week. If you're looking for a church home, we'd love to offer the opportunity to come here to Temple, or come here this Sunday school lesson this weekend if you have the opportunity, and we'd be glad to fellowship with you. Everyone have a good week. Thank you.